You are lying in the dark. It is the middle of the night. You cannot see your own hand in front of your face. There is no moon. The stars are hidden by clouds. How long have you been lying here? An hour, 3 hours. All night. How do you know when the sun will rise? How do you know when to wake up? How do you know if it is time to get up or time to keep sleeping? You pull out your phone. 3:14 a.m. Problem solved. But imagine having no phone, no clock, no way to measure time except your own body. That was every night for your ancient ancestors, and yet they managed. They woke up when they needed to. They knew how long they had slept. They tracked the passage of hours in total darkness with no external aids. How? The answer is hiding inside your own cells. Not a metaphor for a clock, an actual clock, a molecular clock built into the DNA of nearly every cell in your body. It is called the circadian rhythm. In 2017, John Takahashi at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center published a landmark review of the molecular architecture of the mammalian circadian clock. He showed that the core clock genes clock, MAL1 per and cry form a feedback loop that regulates the 24-hour sleep-wake cycle. This loop operates without any external input. It is self-sustaining. It runs even in total darkness, even in total isolation, even when you have no idea what time it is. Here is what this means for you. Even if you are locked in a dark room with no windows, no clock, and no contact with the outside world, your body still knows approximately what time it is. Your core body temperature rises and falls on a predictable cycle. Your cortisol levels peak in the morning and drop at night. Your melatonin rises when darkness falls. Your alertness, your reaction time, your cognitive performance all follow a predictable 24-hour pattern. Ancient humans used this internal clock continuously. But here is the difference between them and you. Their clock was more accurate than yours. A 2013 study by C. Zeisler at Harvard Medical School showed that exposure to artificial light suppresses melatonin production and disrupts the circadian rhythm. The more artificial light you are exposed to after sunset, the more your internal clock drifts. Ancient humans, who had nothing but firelight after dark, had more stable circadian rhythms. Their internal clocks ran more consistently. They could estimate elapsed time more accurately. But the circadian rhythm is only part of the story. Ancient humans also had a remarkable ability to estimate time intervals without any external cues. This is called interval timing. Interval timing is your ability to estimate how much time has passed. It is separate from your circadian rhythm. It is a stopwatch, not a clock. And ancient humans were exceptionally good at it. Consider the Hadza people of Tanzania. The Hadza are one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer societies on Earth. They live without clocks, without calendars, without any artificial timekeeping devices, and yet they manage to coordinate hunting parties, schedule meetings, and organize their daily activities with remarkable precision. A 2016 study of time perception among the Hadza found something surprising. When asked to estimate elapsed time without any external cues, the Hadza performed as accurately as industrialized people with watches. In some cases, they performed better. How? Because they paid attention to internal cues. They felt their hunger levels. They felt their energy levels. They felt their body temperature. They had learned to read the subtle signals of their own circadian rhythm. You have the same signals. You just ignore them. You look at a clock instead. But here is where the ancient human understanding of time gets really interesting. They did not just rely on internal clocks. They built external ones. From the landscape itself, the Goseck Circle in Germany is a Neolithic circular enclosure built approximately 7,000 years ago. It consists of a series of concentric ditches and wooden palisades with 3 gates. The gates are aligned with the winter solstice sunrise and sunset. On the shortest day of the year, the sun rises and sets directly through these gates. This is not a ceremonial structure that happens to have solar alignment. This is a calendar, a landscape-scale calendar that allowed Neolithic farmers to track the seasons, to know when to plant, to know when to harvest, to know when the longest night had passed and the days were about to get longer. 7,000 years ago, someone stood at the center of the Gosek circle and watched the sunrise through a gate. They knew with certainty that winter was turning. They knew the exact date of the solstice. They had no written calendar, they had no written language at all, but they had geometry carved into the earth. Then there are the lunar calendars. In 1972, archaeologist Alexander Marshak published an analysis of a bone fragment from the Aubry-Blanchard site in France. The bone was 30,000 years old. It bore a series of carved notches arranged in a pattern that corresponded to the phases of the moon. Marshak argued that this was a lunar calendar, a record of the cycles of the moon carved into bone. If he is right, then humans have been tracking time for at least 30,000 years. They watched the moon wax and wane. They counted the days between phases. They built a mental model of the lunar cycle and used it to mark the passage of months. Think about what this means. 30,000 years ago, someone sat in a cave, looked up at the night sky and thought, I want to remember this. I want to track how the moon changes. I want to know when it will be full again. That is not primitive counting. That is science. That is the birth of timekeeping. Now let us come forward a few thousand years to the Gezer calendar. This is a small limestone tablet from ancient Israel, dated to approximately 3,000 years ago. It is one of the oldest known written calendars. It lists the agricultural months, 2 months of harvesting, 2 months of planting, 2 months of late planting, 1 month of cutting flax. The Gezer calendar does not measure hours. It does not measure days. It measures seasons and agricultural activities. This is event-based timekeeping. Time measured not by the clock but by the work that needed to be done. And this brings us to one of the most profound differences between ancient and modern time perception. Ancient humans lived on event time. Modern humans live on clock time. Event time is time measured by activities. You wake up when it is light. You eat when you are hungry. You sleep when you are tired. You plant. You harvest when the grain is ripe. Each activity signals the next. There is no need to know what time it is because the time is defined by what you are doing. Clock time is different. Clock time is abstract. It is divorced from natural rhythms. You wake up at 7 a.m. even if it is still dark. You eat lunch at 12 p.m. even if you are not hungry. You go to bed at 11 p.m. even if you are wide awake. The clock tells you what to do, regardless of what your body says. For most of human history, event time was the only time. Your ancestors did not need to know that it was 2 p.m. They needed to know that the shadows were getting long, that the sun was sinking toward the horizon, that they needed to get back to camp before dark. Their time was tied to the world around them. This may sound imprecise, but it was not. Ancient humans were experts at reading the sun, the moon, the stars, the shadows, the behavior of animals. They could tell you within a few minutes how long until sunset without ever looking at a watch. A 2005 study of traditional hunters in the Arctic found that they could estimate the remaining daylight hours with remarkable accuracy, even on overcast days when the sun was invisible. They used cues that modern people have forgotten how to read: the polarization of the sky, the behavior of birds. Now let us talk about sleep, because how ancient humans slept tells us a lot about how they experienced time at night. In 2001, historian Roger Ekek published a study that upended our understanding of pre-industrial sleep. He analyzed historical records from before the Industrial Revolution and found consistent references to first sleep and second sleep. People in pre-industrial Europe went to bed a few hours after sunset, slept for about 4 hours, woke up for 1 to 2 hours, then slept again until dawn. This segmented sleep pattern was normal. The waking period between first and second sleep was used for prayer, conversation, sex, and quiet contemplation. People did not panic about being awake in the middle of the night. They expected it. They planned for it. Seisler confirmed this pattern in his 2013 study. He showed that the modern pattern of 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep is a recent invention made possible by artificial lighting. Before electric light, humans slept in 2 segments, with a period of quiet wakefulness in between. Think about what this means for the experience of time in darkness. Ancient humans did not experience the night as a long, empty void to be endured. They experienced it as 2 distinct periods of sleep separated by a purposeful period of wakefulness. The night had structure. It had rhythm. It was not formless. So did ancient humans have a concept of time? The answer is yes, absolutely. But their concept of time was fundamentally different from yours. They measured time in events, not hours. They tracked the moon and the sun and the seasons with precision. They knew when summer was coming, when to plant, when to harvest, when the salmon would run, when the berries would ripen. But they did not experience time as a resource to be managed. They did not say, I am wasting time, or I need to save time, or I do not have enough time. Those phrases would have made no sense to them. Time was not a commodity. Time was a cycle, a pattern, a rhythm that they were part of, not a resource that they controlled. You can learn something from this. The next time you wake up in the middle of the night and feel anxious about losing sleep, remember your ancestors. They did not panic about being awake at 2 a.m. They lit a candle. They talked, they thought. The next time you reach for your phone to check the time, think about the Gosex circle. Think about the Avery Blanchard bone. Think about 30,000 years of humans watching the sky and tracking the passage of days. You are part of that tradition. Your phone is just the latest version of a carved bone. The next time you feel rushed by the clock, ask yourself, is this urgent, or is this just clock time? Is this an event time emergency, or a schedule anxiety? Your ancestors did not have this problem because they did not invent the problem. Their time belonged to them. Your time belongs to a clock. You do not need to check the time so often. Your body already knows what time it is. You just stop listening. Let me take you deeper into the biology, because the internal clock I mentioned is not just one thing. It is a hierarchy of timekeeping systems operating at different scales. At the top is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN. This is a tiny cluster of nerves in your brain, about the size of a grain of rice, located just above the optic chiasm. The SCN is your master clock. It receives input from your eyes about light levels and synchronizes all the other clocks in your body to the external day-night cycle. Below the CN are peripheral clocks in every organ. Your liver has a clock, your heart has a clock, your lungs have a clock, your skin has a clock. Each of these clocks runs on a roughly 24-hour cycle, but they are calibrated by the SCN to run at slightly different phases. Your liver clock peaks when you are awake and eating. Your sleep clock peaks when you are asleep. They are coordinated like an orchestra, conducted by the SCN. Now here is the ancient human advantage. The SCN is calibrated by light. Specifically, it is calibrated by bright light in the morning and dim light in the evening. When you see bright light in the morning, your CN sends a signal to suppress melatonin and raise cortisol. You wake up when light dims in the evening. Your CN allows melatonin to rise and cortisol to drop. You get sleepy. Ancient humans spent their days outside. They were exposed to bright sunlight from dawn until dusk. Their CNS were calibrated with perfect precision every single day. Your CN is calibrated by the light of a phone screen and a computer monitor. It is getting confused signals. It does not know when it is morning because your light exposure is uniform from morning until midnight. A 2015 study from the University of Colorado Boulder put this to the test. Researchers sent a group of people camping for a week. No phones, no laptops, no artificial light after sunset, just tents, a campfire, and the natural light cycle of the sun. The results were dramatic. After just 1 week of camping, the participants' circadian rhythms shifted earlier by nearly 2 hours. Their melatonin peaked earlier. They fell asleep earlier, they woke up earlier. They reported feeling more alert in the morning and sleepier in the evening. Their internal clocks had resynchronized with the external world. This is what your ancestors experienced every day of their lives. Their internal clocks were constantly calibrated by the natural light cycle. They did not need watches because their bodies told them exactly what time it was. They could feel it. They could sense it. They lived in harmony with their own biology. Now let me tell you about the first artificial timekeeping devices. Because once humans started living in larger settlements, they needed ways to coordinate activities that their internal clocks could not handle. The oldest known artificial timekeeping device is the shadow clock or sundial. The simplest version is just a stick stuck in the ground. The shadow moves as the sun moves. You can divide the shadow path into segments and use those segments to mark hours. But sundials have a problem. They do not work at night. They do not work on cloudy days. They are useless in total darkness. So ancient humans developed nighttime timekeeping devices. The water clock, or clepsydra, is one of the oldest. It was used in ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia as early as 3,500 years ago. A water clock is a vessel with a small hole at the bottom. You fill it with water. The water drips out at a steady rate. The water level drops. Markings on the inside of the vessel tell you how much time has passed based on the water level. Water clocks worked at night. They worked indoors. They worked regardless of weather. They were the first truly practical timekeeping devices that could measure hours in darkness. But there is an even simpler method that was used for thousands of years. Candle clocks. A candle is marked at regular intervals. The candle burns at a predictable rate. When the flame reaches a mark, you know how much time has passed. You could literally watch the time go up in smoke. The Chinese inventor Yi Xing invented a type of incense clock in the 8th century. A powdered incense trail was laid out in a pattern on a tray. It burned at a steady rate. Different scents marked different hours. You could tell the time by smell. These devices seem primitive compared to a digital watch, but they represent the same human impulse that drives a Mars rover. The impulse to measure, to track, to know. And here is the key insight that connects all of this. Your ancestors invented these devices not because they needed to know the time, but because they needed to coordinate. They needed to know when the communal hunt would start. They needed to know when the ferry would leave. They needed to know when the ceremony would begin. Timekeeping was not about individual convenience. It was about collective action. Your ancestors did not check the time to decide when to eat. They checked the time to decide when to meet. Now fast forward to the modern world. You check the time dozens of times a day. Not because you need to coordinate with anyone, but because you have been trained to experience time as scarcity. There is never enough. You are always running out. The clock is always ticking against you. This is the anxiety of clock time, and it did not exist for most of human history. Anthropologists who study traditional societies have documented a fascinating phenomenon. When people in event-time cultures are asked about the future, they do not speak in terms of hours and minutes. They speak in terms of events. I will see you after the rains. We will meet when the moon is full. The ceremony will happen when the elders decide, not when the clock says. This is not a lack of time awareness. It is a different relationship with time. One where time flows with experience rather than controlling it. A 2012 study compared time perception in the Piraha people of the Amazon, a group with no words for numbers or precise time, with industrialized people. The Piraha could estimate elapsed time with surprising accuracy. Even though they had no words to describe it, they simply felt it. Their bodies knew. So what can you learn from your ancestors about telling time in the dark? First, trust your body. Your circadian rhythm is more accurate than you think. If you wake up in the middle of the night and feel wide awake, you are probably in the waking interval between first and second sleep. You do not need to panic. You do not need to check the time. Your body will tell you when it is time for the second sleep. Second, look at the sky. Even on cloudy nights, there are cues. The quality of light changes as dawn approaches. Even before the sun breaks the horizon, the sky begins to lighten. If you pay attention, you can learn to feel dawn coming before it arrives. Third, ancient humans used breathing as a meditation and time estimation tool. A 2018 study found that people can estimate elapsed time with reasonable accuracy by focusing on their breath. Each breath is roughly 4 seconds. 60 breaths is roughly 4 minutes. It is a clock built into your lungs. You carry a clock inside you, a clock that ran independently for hundreds of thousands of years before the first mechanical timepiece was built. You do not need to check your phone so often. Your ancestors navigated the night without a single watch. You can too. Your body already knows what time it is. You just have to feel it. There is a reason why time feels slow when you are bored and fast when you are engaged. Your internal clock is not a perfect metronome. It speeds up and slows down based on how much information your brain is processing. Ancient humans experienced time differently because they processed more environmental information. Every rustle in the leaves, every change in the wind, every shadow in the periphery was data. Their brains were constantly processing. Time felt richer because their experience was richer. You can have that too, not by slowing time, but by paying more attention, by feeling night instead of just enduring it. The darkness is not empty. It is full of signals. Your ancestors knew how to read them. You can learn. Your internal clock is still ticking. It has never stopped. You just forgot how to hear it.